What's it all about? Why are we here? Is there a God? What happens when we die? In this series, I'm talking to public figures about these questions. Like me, none of them claims to be a religious expert, but all of them have, at times, had cause to think about the meaning of life. Hello, welcome. And our guest this time is Niall Quinn. Welcome, Niall, and thank you for joining us.
It's our pleasure, Kate.
Now, I have to explain, first of all, that our guest this time has the amazing distinction of having achieved 2 years in succession the All-Ireland Under-12 Long Puck GAA Championship, which I may say his father Billy considers his greatest achievement, then and since. And I want to start by asking you, Niall, did your father ever forgive you for trading this prodigious GAA talent to go off and play the other thing?
Well, it started in Dublin, and to slightly correct you, I won it 3 times under 12. But anyway, that's okay. For the record. I suppose my father was one of these people, Tipperary man, where hurling was everything. I can remember as a young lad, he'd be on the sideline shouting and roaring at me, and if I pulled out of a tackle, he wouldn't speak to me for 2 weeks, So that was the way we were brought up.
And you also said that you would happily swap 19 years of football achievement for scoring the winning point in the Munster final.
That's the way I was brought up, Gay. Yeah, it was interesting because...
But then why did you give up playing?
I suppose the glamour of playing for Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal had some great Irish players at the time, certainly through my childhood. You had Liam Brady, Frank Stapleton, David O'Leary. But I suppose there was stability as well. They gave me a 3-year contract. Now, I was a guy who a week before the All-Ireland hurling final went up to Dublin and did the post office exam to try and get a job as a postman. So I kind of, it was a job. Now, would you believe,
How much were you getting?
My first wage before tax was £150, which after tax was about 120, which was great. But I had my pals going getting £300 a week at the time.
Take me back to when you were smaller now, the household, mum and dad and family, all of that. Was it a very religious family or not at all?
Yeah, absolutely. My mother still is 7 days a week mass goer. My father, I'd say, has probably never missed mass in his life on a Sunday. And we were brought into that fold, and, I suppose would have been, until I left for the bright lights of London, I would have been an absolute regular churchgoer.
Was it a family rosary household? We
would have said the rosary quite often. I remember I was very small, and we used to jump around my mother's bed and we'd always say the rosary. And my dad had come in, we knew my dad would be coming in because the cat would run. The cat would know that he was coming for us, and he didn't like the cat, so the cat would just take off and we went, okay, he must be near here. And he'd walk in the door and he'd come up, and I remember one time he had a few drinks in him, and it was his turn to say a decade. And he got the words all wrong because he had a few drinks in him. And us as kids were trying not to laugh, pulling the sheets up to our nose. And my mother was disgusted with him, of course, as you can imagine. So that was the kind of background that I grew up with, yeah.
When you were going off to Arsenal, and there you were 16 or thereabouts, and your father said to you, "Don't do a Jack Doyle on us."
Yes.
What did he mean by that?
Well, I suppose at the time, when my dad was growing up, there was a famous Irish boxer, actor, tenor called Jack Doyle from Cork, and he had done things that nobody in Irish life did. He was the first, I suppose, Irish superstar in many respects. He was making headline news in the papers. He was hanging around with royalty. He was a sportsman. He was set to be the wealthiest Irish man that ever lived. And of course, sadly for Jack Doyle, he died in a back street in London in the 70s, penniless and destitute, broken man, a drunken man. And it was a lovely warning to get.
Your father had the fear.
He had the fear, yeah, I think he did. And my mother would have done too.
Your father warned you, don't do a Jack Doyle on us, but you did.
I did. I had a good look at it.
A good look at it, as you say. Yes, tell me about that period. You really you did go mad.
Well, yeah, I suppose, it's very easy looking back on it now. I had a great couple of years with Arsenal. I was, young, single, a few quid in my back pocket. Got into the Irish team. Everything was starting to go right for me. And then it started to go a little bit wrong. I was enjoying this great life, and then suddenly there was a manager, George Graham, say, "No, I have somebody better than you who's going to play, but I'm not letting you go anywhere else. I'm going to keep you," because in those days they had the power to do that, football clubs. And I got frustrated with that. And of course, when you're not playing a big game at the weekend, exactly, instead of going home and going to bed on a Thursday early and a Friday early, sure, I'd go off out with the guys who were coming off the building sites, and they'd had a hard works week. So I'd have Friday night out all night. Saturday I'd have another go at it because it was Saturday. And then we had this drinking culture within the club then, which in the early part of the week, we used to call it the Tuesday Club. I think Tony Adams and Paul Merson famously wrote about it. And I can remember turning up for training one Thursday, we're all in the same clothes we were in, for instance, say on the Tuesday morning. And it consumed Paul and Tony, I suppose, more than just physically. Now, I was lucky because I was able to escape out of it with my Irish friends, and it didn't consume me.
But the drink was bad enough. You got into gambling as well.
Oh, yeah, I had a good look at everything, yes.
You said you swam on the river, but you never got wet.
Near enough. Well, I was even though I'd kind of had 3 or 4 years of going to the edge, and at times my mother bailed me out once or twice. Luck is a funny thing, and you go chasing luck, it never comes, and luck arrived at us.
And it was just horses you backed?
Horses, yeah, I had nothing else but horses. And when I went up to Man City in 1990, I think I got the Texaco Sports Star of the Year award, and for football, for soccer, and there was lots of other categories, and I'd never really been at an award like that, and it was lovely. And I sat beside Jim Bulger, famous racehorse trainer, one of the greatest I think that's ever lived. And the next day I went home with a docket for a horse in my bag. Now, the horse turned out to be the best 2-year-old in Ireland that year, and from earning sort of hundreds of pounds a week, myself and Gillian, who were just about to get married, it was around that time, we had an offer of £250,000 old Irish punts for the horse. Suddenly then we got this lottery win, if you like, and that's when, funny enough, I started to cop on a bit with it all. And
how did Gillian stick it? She went to be near you, obviously. She went to live in Manchester,
yeah.
And yet you were still on the tear.
I was, yeah, and she was very, very young. Gillian was 19 when she came to live in Manchester.
And you were?
I was 24. My mother went around, of course, and had to tell everybody that they were living in digs around the corner from each other, but we actually, we went under the same roof together. And I suppose in some ways, I was on a roll, and Man City was going great for me. And around town, we were the kind of people who would get in anywhere. We were the kind of people who were asked to do
the dream couple.
Well, no, I wouldn't say Gillian was that. I'd say the sports people. And Gillian got fed up with that. And Gillian said, "This is ridiculous. What are you doing? Cop yourself on." And I was going, "No, we've got something else to go to." And I would have been on that role where she'd say, "Well, I'm not going." And I'd say, "Okay, I'll be home at 11," and I'd get home at 4:30 in the morning. I think that's probably where it reached a kind of a point. And when the opportunity came to go to Sunderland, it wasn't so much an opportunity as it was the last stop saloon. It was, because I'd had injuries and no other club wanted me. And Sunderland, at the last minute, came in for me, and I took a lot less money to go to Sunderland. But I think it was the best time of our lives together, certainly.
Now, talking about your attitude to the game and all of that, no, I don't want to go back to Mick and Saipan and Roy and all of that. We've been through it. But it strikes me out of all of that Roy comes across as this rather gloomy, dedicated perfectionist, and it must be done right, or not at all. You have a rather more relaxed and happy attitude to the whole thing.
Yeah, probably you might be far off with that there, but at the same time, when that comes together and works well, I think you can sort of get the benefit of both. And what was great for the time when Ryan and I got back together, Saipan happened, and I could get on with life very easy afterwards. Nobody died.
But the philosophy of the thing.
Yeah, the philosophy of the thing. But then, a couple of years later, 2006, 4 years later, I approached Roy. I got permission from the Drumville Consortium, who were interested in taking over at Sunderland, something that I put together. I gave my list of 3 people who I thought should manage it. And the third name I put down was Roy Keane. And they all started laughing and thought I was taking a joke at one of these meetings. And I went, no, and I suppose what I saw was, he was box office, still is.
Sure.
And I knew that our club was in such a poor way that this was the perfect fit. And he was the one man who I felt could get that going really quickly. So Roy agreed to come over and speak, which would have been the first time we would have met since Saipan. And he said, "Look, before we start, Niall and I have a couple of things to speak. Would you mind if we sort ourselves out?" It was great. We went in, we had a couple of minutes in the room, and we came out as a unity that had forgotten, in effect, or were going to leave behind everything that happened to do the right thing on this project. He wouldn't pull out of a challenge as a footballer, so we wouldn't pull out of a challenge as a manager, and he did an amazing job. He didn't just lift a football club, he lifted a city. And Sunderland felt good about itself for the first time in a long time, and we won the championship, and life just couldn't have got better for either of us, I think, in terms of what we were trying to do. Everything was going really, really well, but then the first sort of knockings, okay, the bank collapses here, etc., started to put a hole in all that, and very quickly we had to sell. I found a buyer for the club, and Roy and him didn't hit it off, and so the fizz came out of the whole thing.
Tell me about when the tap turns off. Your career is over, you're done. Do you think you coped with that well or badly or in between?
Very badly, I would suggest. And I suppose 2002 happened, and in Saipan and World Cup, and it was meant to be the swan song of my career. The testimonial was my last act, and I was going to go off into the countryside and lead a quiet life, and everything was great. But it didn't quite end like that. Came home to Ireland, I flew home, Gillian was home for the weekend. I said, I'm going back when, that's it, it's all over. And I hadn't even sat down to talk to my wife about how we were going to financially restructure everything that we did. And I said, I'll be fine, don't worry, I'm grand. And that was fine. For 3 months I felt it was the right thing to do, and I went off playing golf, and I'd turn up at celebrity golf days, I'd be smiley and I'd be happy, and everyone would think I was a great lad. And then I was getting home, and Gillian was going, what's all this about? And I got into a dark area there, I suppose.
Depression?
Yeah. The people were ringing the phone, and I was getting job offers. I wouldn't even answer the phone to them. And then very suddenly you get bogged down with yourself. And to be honest, little things become big things. It was probably a 6-month spell where I was horrible to be around. And how she put up with me during that time, I don't know. The world was crumbling around me, and I was there thinking, well, I'm not going to do anything about it.
But you had plenty of money.
I had a few quid. We got our. I'd saved well, certainly since I met Gillian. No, she's very good at that.
This is Gillian the banker.
Gillian, near enough. Yeah. She had a bad start in life when I spent all her money when she first came over, but she soon turned it around. But then as it kind of came towards an end, not really. We were on a project here to build this, and we were committed, and we bought the land, and we were suddenly finding ourselves engulfed almost.
And looking back on it, was this because your entire identity was football? And who you were and what you were.
Perhaps, yeah. I like any footballer will tell you, you don't prepare properly. No. And not only financially, but in terms of everything that you're pushing yourself towards, and why are you doing all this football? You were doing it to stay doing it, and then one day it stops. And it's the same for every footballer. Now, thankfully, with Gillian's help, got myself back on track, went back and doing a bit of Sky TV, got my face back on the TV again. I started to get my confidence back, my ability to go off out and be part of the world again.
You never got so bad as your friend Gary Speed or anything like that, no?
Yeah, well, Gary's was instant. We all sort of question and look back at that time and say, why, how, what? The world is full of good guys, bad guys. He was the best. Everybody who met him would say he was the person that touched them, that made them feel great about themselves. He could be funny when he needed to be funny. He could be sincere when he needed to be sincere. Just one of the most beautiful people you will ever meet in your life. And that's why, the football world came to a shuddering halt when they heard the news about Gary Speed. It was an incredible low for football, but football rallied round, and I think football seemed to we saw through the pain of Gary's. I think we also saw maybe there is a part of football where people do care, and where people have got their priorities in order,
Tell me about the testimonial on your retirement. You gave all the proceeds, which well over $1 million, to Children's Hospital in Crumlin and Gold. What prompted that?
Well, I felt I didn't deserve a testimonial, first of all, because I hadn't spent my whole career at one club. And I do believe that if I had have kept the money, I would have got half the crowd, paid 40% tax, I'd have got maybe a quarter of the money, and a reputation perhaps as another player who's creaming it off at the end of his career. So that was the logic that I spoke to my wife about in doing it. And she, in fairness to Gillian, she's backed me 100% in everything I've ever done, and that was a tough thing to do. Certainly you're coming to the end of your career, but the greatest thing to come out of it, well, I got a letter from a guy in prison who said he's a Sunderland fan, his mother and father are Irish, I've had a bad life, but I want to do something right. I can't attend the game because they won't let me, in a bit of a ha-ha. He said, but could you send me a ticket or a programme, and I will send you, and his very words were, a non-attendance ticket. And he sparked the idea. A guy in a hellhole of a situation somewhere in a prison in the south of England sparked an idea, and we said, okay, that's incredible. This is a lovely story. Maybe others might do it. And we got in excess of 30,000 people who bought non-attendance tickets.
Non-attendance.
Whenever I look back, people give, say, put them in prison, throw the door away, lock the key. Sorry, throw the key away. I should say, lock the door. I have a different view, and I visit one or two people, friends of mine. I've also, tragically ended up in jail, and I have a different view entirely.
Tell me about the letter you got from the little girl in India, which you kept pinned up for a long time in your kitchen.
I got one for each player. We brought in goal as well. We were able to give £500,000 to Sunderland. We were able to give, and this was sterling, £500,000 to Crumlin, and we were able to give about 100,000 to John O'Shea's goal. Who had a street project in Calcutta. And in time for the game, John was able to get a letter from each child in Calcutta to give to the players who were playing for me that night. Now, the normal practice when you have a testimonial is to give the players a nice gift for turning up. And that went a little bit crazy, where guys were getting Rolex watches and stuff for turning up. So I thought, well, the best thing to keep people in the spirit of this and let anyone who played know what this was all about was an individual letter addressed to each player.
From whom?
From young children in Calcutta who, I suppose the best way to describe it is we're heading for a lifetime, well, a young life in perhaps prostitution, all the different things that you can imagine, all the wrong things that could happen to somebody in those vulnerable situations. So I suppose it was in broken kind of English, as you can imagine, but dear Ms. Quinn, I believe you're playing a football match to help me. Thank you very much. I'm now told I'm going to be able to go to school. I've always wanted to go to school, and you're the person who and you can, thinking about it now, it's close to the bone,
That urge then, that decision to do that at that time, was that faith-based or religious-based, or just decency, or your mother's example, or?
My mother was a huge influence on me and always will be, and she always spoke about getting the balance right, that money is no good if it's not propped up with what you do with the money, then you're always going to have problems with it. And she has a wonderful saying, and I've kind of lived by it, you'll never outdo the Lord in generosity. And she's absolutely right. Gillian, of course, was in there as well. She bought into it, and I suppose it was payback too, because we have a lovely life. There was no point in me getting big pats on the back and sitting there on my own saying, doesn't everybody think I'm great? That wasn't the reason. It was more like, let's do this then. And when I eventually meet him at the gates, I'll kind of say, look, I know I was terrible in all these other areas, but I did, I mightn't have gone to mass all the time when I should have, and all the rest of it. But it's probably deep from my mother as well, that you end up, okay, just set the record straight on it.
So what is the meaning of life for you, Niall?
I'm a very positive person, and sometimes people criticise me for being too positive. I don't see the recession as being the end of Ireland. I see an opportunity for us to redirect and go a different way. The whole meaning of life to me is to learn the good things in life, know where the bad areas are, be aware of them, respect them, occasionally have a little look in at them and see what everybody else is at. And I suppose be appreciative, I guess, that when you do get a bit of a break, don't throw it into people's faces.
Would you describe the household at the moment as a generally sort of formally religious house, or?
Gillian is very spiritual, and she would go off out for walks with the dogs and pray that things go a certain way, or she is a deeper, more spiritual thinker than me. I'm off out the gate trying to do new things all the time. When I see a challenge, I go head on to it. Gillian would stop to think about it and work it out and maybe say a few prayers to get us through it. The kids, we're pleased that the kids have a relationship with the Lord, and it's their relationship. We don't interfere. I love the fact that my children pray off their own back. We don't insist on being in at 9 o'clock to say a prayer, that they do it their own way, and let them discover it all for themselves. And there's a lot of problems out there, and and the Catholic Church is probably at its lowest ebb of all time in many respects. But so we wouldn't be saying, you must do everything as the Catholic Church said. We'd like them. I'm a proud Catholic. I should be a better Catholic than I am. If somebody turned around and tried to take the Catholic religion out of this household, I'd fight very hard to keep it in. I mightn't show that day to day. And we just hope that they just find a way with it, and that they'll never hit dark areas and dark spots without it.
When you used to be playing, did you pray?
I did, yes. Yes, I did, of course. You would, and like all people, I suppose, you kind of discover your fate when you need something badly. And when I was getting a bit of stick, maybe I was going to be dropped off the Irish team and I needed a goal, or you know, or but it was at Arsenal at the time, or you know, I would, of course I would. Nobody would pray better than me, and I love dropping into a church every now and then. I think that's far better than going and listening to a recital every Sunday for an hour. My prayers aren't reciting, sort of, as I say, all the old prayers. My prayers would be just, you know, I'd ask the odd question and say thanks and kind of, I know you're with me. Thanks for that.
And what's God to you?
I think he's there. I think he has his eye on me. He's probably letting me off, knowing that, okay, you're doing a little bit more good at times than bad. But I do think there'll be a ready up, and he'll balance it up. He'll be like any auditor when he comes to sorting out my life. And anywhere it's gone well, he'll be there to say, yeah, I was helping you there.
What do you think Jesus was?
I think he was a great example, and as somebody who probably tried to reset the way people's lives were going. Our Lady was the biggest thing that was prayed to in our house growing up, and anything we ever needed, my mother used to always say, you know, that Our Lady will look after you.
Do you think Jesus was divine?
I probably do, yeah. I'd still have that belief in me that there was something there, something powerful there, that he was the Son of God, and that he did, you know, I can take it, I can accept that. I'm not a non-believer in that. And then you hear all the scandals and the stuff and the power and that the church later brought on. But I can separate myself from that, you know, the way people like Brian Darcy separates himself from that. They're great people. Like one of my greatest friends in life, Father Byrne, who happened to be the parish priest here by pure coincidence when we came home, but he was a great friend of mine forever. And my greatest period of religious belief was during Father Byrne's tenure here, when he had me doing all sorts. I was collecting for the missions. He had me doing everything. But he was a man who loved his horse racing. He was a real down-to-earth person. He came to the people. Some people didn't believe in that, said he should be praying every day of the week, but he was a man of the people. And I think I'd like to see Jesus as that kind of person, that when I got into a little bit of a skirmish, or if I had a bit of a crack at something, that Jesus would laugh at that too, but then also remind you that you have to do the right thing. So I'm not for the must do this, must do that.
Now, after football and everything else, you're one of the ones who's gone into business, and the association with Sunderland is now finished. CEO of QSAT.
Yeah, chairman of QSAT. I'm chairman of QSAT. Yeah, QSAT is a company. I got the opportunity to come home.
What is it?
Yeah, QSAT. First of all, it's a company that provides the internet, for want of a better word, broadband, to places where none of the other fibres or masts can go. So, for instance, a lot of places in rural Ireland that people just cannot get internet, and they're at a serious disadvantage. The major telcos won't spend monies to go out there, of course, because it's not economically viable to do that, but we can, and we're hoping that we'd be recognised in the last sort of 8 or 9 months as we've put this company together.
It would seem to be either an act of perversity or amazing courage and optimism to set up a new company just when the Celtic Tiger tail stops wagging, and also with a name like Quinn, it wouldn't be the best. It wouldn't be the best in business circles at the moment for various reasons. So I'm entitled to ask, how is it going?
It's going very, very well. We have in excess of 6,000 customers in a short space of time. Give you a little example of where we can come in and be a real help to people. In the Gaeltacht regions, for instance, 7 of the 8 banks of a particular bank were closed, announced rural bank closures recently. We can go in and put rural internet banking in for all the people who will now, you know, have to, instead of having to travel 30, 40
miles. Who now lack all of that.
Who now lack all of that, yeah. So we're getting right up to about 50 employees that we have to look after. But the effort that they're putting back in makes me feel real good that we have a future.
And your head is on the block for all of this pretty well.
Yeah, my head is on the block. We've you know, in terms of our customer care capacity, where we want to go, this company is a Niall Quinn company. What that means is we mightn't be doing glamorous ads on TV and driving jeeps around the country with models in it running around telling everybody how great we are. We'll just do what it says on the tin. So, a bit like my football, I'll get stuck in, Gay, and I'll miss a few open goals, but I'll get the odd one.
And what is this for? Is this to make money or to achieve something?
A bit of both. I suppose, yes. I have to kind of...
You have to pay the bills.
I have to pay the bills, yeah. Absolutely, and I have to, you know, I had to reinvent myself. And funny enough, I met Dermot Desmond recently. I don't know him that well, but he did say to me, he said, you got a better... Because I said to him, you know, I had no real education. I didn't do my Leaving Cert, and I didn't go to university. And he said to me, you went to the University of Life. And he said that'll stand to you far more. So I felt a bit more confident after speaking to him about that.
Okay, final question, and it's the stock question we ask everybody in this series of programs, Meaning of Life. If it's all true, Niall, everything you were taught by the Christian brothers in Crumlin and all of that, and your mother believed in all of that, if it's all true and you end up meeting your maker on the final day, what will you say to him, her, it?
I suppose there'll have to be some form of thanks in there for everything I've done, and I'd be the first to hold my hand up that there was a lot of things there that weren't right, and hopefully there's not too many more of them to come. And I guess, just if you're balancing it up, I hope I've done enough on this side to let me in, but I'd say could be a recount. I don't know. We'll see how it goes on.
You'll hope for the best.
I'll hope for the best. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On Tuesday, a new 3-part series, Bullyproof, sees psychologist David Coleman looking closely at the phenomenon of bullying and helping young people to take steps to help combat it. That's at 10:15. Our Off This Report is next year on RTE1.